Cool. Well, Eric, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So you're here representing the Athletes Grid. The Athlete Grid?
The Athletes Grid.
The Athletes Grid?
Yeah, apostrophe S.
Apostrophe S. Okay, the possessive.
Yes, exactly.
It's not anyone's grid. It's the Athletes Grid.
The Athletes Grid.
Cool. So you want to tell us just a little bit about like the Athletes Grid and about yourself, how you kind of got into the sports specialist designation that you have. We'll let you get into that thing, and kind of like things that you like about functional training and things you want to see going forward and all that stuff. Like, what's your history? How'd you get into this stuff?
All right, that's a very loaded question there. So let's start with the beginning.
Right.
I entered first grade, and then not. No. Well, basically, I always had. Growing up, I always liked playing sports.
Right.
But the problem is I stunk at everything, like really bad at everything.
Right.
And, it was one of those things, like my parents were great. They never really said, you have to do this sport. You have to keep, they never pushed me to do anything. Like if I didn't want to do something, they were like, okay, that's fine. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. So as such, I did like a year of Taekwondo, but I thought the instructor was mean and I didn't want to go anymore.
Right.
Then, I took tennis lessons. I did swimming for a while. Then, the second things would get hard, I would just get discouraged and stop immediately.
Right.
Just one of those things. So I finished, let's see, when was this? So now around 2007 or so, my dad was trying to get, a little bit more fit. So he bought a kettlebell from a guy that was making them out in Brampton, actually.
I remember that, actually. Jeez.
Oh, really?
That's how you used to get kettlebells.
Superhero strength?
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Yep.
Okay, Peter?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's where you used to get kettlebells. For people that don't know, you couldn't just go online and buy them.
No.
You had to get them from someone
Exactly.
that made them. Yep.
Did he show you the 175-pounder that he had made?
No, I just had people go pick it up off, someone found them on Kijiji or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember that's how the very first kettlebells I ever used were from him.
Yeah, so my dad bought a 35-pounder one, so the cast iron one, it was red, and he was starting working out with it, and I saw that, I'm like, the heck is that thing? I'd never heard about a kettlebell before prior to then, so I started playing around with it, it's kind of fun. Then I go on YouTube to figure out what else you can do with it, and then I came across something called kettlebell sport. So I saw that people were actually competing with this thing, and it was still very, very sparse things that were happening there. So a lot of the videos were out of Russia and Eastern Europe where people were competing with it. And I later learned that the way you compete with it is that, there's two main events. There's the biathlon and then long cycle, which is clean and jerk. And the biathlon is two separate sets of one just jerks and another one just snatches.
Right.
And it's a very strength endurance type of sport. So you do as many reps as you can in a period of 10 minutes. So I thought, this is kind of interesting. So I started playing around with it myself.
Which, by the way, sounds terrible as a CrossFit for 10 minutes. That sounds awful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's not for everybody. Even me, too. When I'm in a set, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah. Anyways.
So I started just playing around with that with myself and, just Googling to see what kettlebell organizations are out there. And there's one that was based out of Ohio, and they were coming to Toronto to do a certification. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let me get into this. So now this is summer 2008. I did the cert, and I guess I impressed the head coach, the owner of this organization, and he used to be the youth national champion, and he's from Kyrgyzstan.
Okay.
Kyrgyzstan?
Yeah.
I can't pronounce
I think you said that right. Sounds legit.
You're better in that language than I am, I think. So then after that, he sent me an email that offered me coaching. So we did some coaching from a distance, and I just it's one of those sports I just excelled at rather quickly.
Right.
And I think part of it is just because I just have the frame for it. It's a little bit easier for me to find rest if I'm just racking two kettlebells here, just because my upper arms are so long and my torso is relatively small. My iliac crest is this high.
Yeah,
so if I go down here.
Right on your hip.
Exactly. So I can just rest there completely. So it came a little bit easy for me. And then, I got to meet new friends. One of the guys that I trained with in Toronto, he was one of my groomsmen at my wedding. So,
wow, okay.
I go to Ohio several times. I've been to Michigan. I've been to Las Vegas. All those things, just competing and that stuff.
Right.
So it was a really great community. And then I hurt my back. So I remember I was working on my garage, and I was doing a snatch, and something just went out in my upper back here. Things just seized up. So I went to my chiropractor, who I hadn't seen since I was 12 years old, and a couple of treatments, she was able to fix me up. And then I was set, because one, I was doing a sport that I was finally loving and excelling at and meeting friends at with all that stuff, and all of a sudden I couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
So to find somebody who was able to take that pain away and get me back to doing the sport that I love to do, I was sold immediately.
Right.
And this was like the summer after I graduated from undergrad too, because I graduated still not knowing what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I applied for chiro school and I got in for the following year. And since day one, I'm like, where's the sports club? Okay, let me go to the sports club that they meet every week at noon and talk about sports-related stuff and sports injuries, and kept going that way. Then after my 4-year degree, I got into a competitive sports residency program at the chiro school in Toronto here.
Yeah.
So I did that. So I specialize in athletes and athletics, and so now I'm a sports specialist chiropractor, all because of that little red kettlebell that my dad brought home one day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So a big part of my approach, and just based on my personal experience, is injury prevention. Mm-hmm. It's one of those topics that I'm really passionate about. Right. I've lectured about it before I researched it. So it's something that truly means a lot to me, because if I can ideally prevent pain from happening or quickly try to get it away so you can get back to doing the thing that you love to do, then it's worth it.
Right.
So that's like one of those.
That's cool. Helping you stay injury free so you can stay participating in the sport or activity that you like doing.
Exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a sports specialist and a regular chiropractor?
Our scopes of practice is the same. We have like the same abilities to do things, but the only thing is that a sports specialist, it shows that you've spent an extra few years trying to educating yourself and getting certain requirements as well. Like to be a specialist, I had to do at least 1,000 field hours, mm-hmm. where like I'm on the field, doing being like the team doctor essentially of athletic events. So I've done 1,000 plus hours of that. Then research. So I had to conduct research myself. So wrote a systematic review. I published 2 case reports, and did an original thesis as well. With kettlebells actually. Right. So, yeah, at first I wanted to do something more kettlebell sport related, but then my thesis supervisor was like, "No, we can't do that. You got to try something else." Right. So I did. I investigated the Turkish get-up actually. Cool. So my study is the very first and only one out there that's actually investigating the Turkish get-up. So we looked at like shoulder muscle activation around the shoulders during the Turkish get-up. But anyways, that's another aside. Then plus I have a lot of other coursework as well. So learned a lot about sports nutrition, sports psychology. We had like a sports class too, where we learned more about athletic injuries and different ways that we can manage them. Cool. And then after all that, you take a really hard, grueling 2-day board exam. So there's a written component, then there's a practical component as well. Mm-hmm. And after all of that, then if you pass it, then you become a specialist. Cool. So out of the 9,000 plus chiros in Canada, there's 120-ish specialists in Canada.
That's a crazy low percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
I was not aware it was that special.
It's very special because not everybody wants to do that hard work that I did.
I guess especially if your scope of practice is the same, you really got to love sport to want to specialize in it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then you guys with the Athletes Grid, what's the when looking for a place to work, or people to work with, what was it about their approach that I'm sure as being one of 120, you could have gone anywhere. Yeah. What was it about this particular team of folks that made you be like, this is where I want to?
They're very just like-minded individuals. Right. They all have we all have the same goals, is to get people back to doing the things that they love to do, mm-hmm. and definitely with more of a sport focus, but more of like a movement based approach as well. Right. So it's not that we're solely just doing things passively. There's a huge active component as well. Right. Like every one of my patients has homework they have to do. Right. Actually, that's how I charted my notes, homework.
Yeah, this is what you got to do before you come back and see me.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So they're just a really good group, like-minded group of individuals, and different specialties as well. So we have physios, there's another chiro, there's nutritionists as well. But again, we all all roads lead to Rome. So Rome is getting the athlete to to like where they want to be, and we're all just different roads kind of leading to that.
Kind of get them there.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what really attracted me to that particular company and
cool.
working with them.
Awesome. And then so far, I mean, it's only been like a month or so.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've noticed here so far? Things that people are doing well, things that people are doing not well, things that people could focus more on.
Like exercise wise?
Yeah, movement, exercise wise. Any like, man, everyone's hurting the same thing, or like patterns of any sort that you see.
Well, honestly, you guys actually do a pretty good job because there's not like many injuries that I've seen here so far. So kudos to you,
nice.
By the way.
Kudos to the coaches.
Yeah, absolutely, the coaches. I think that's a good question because you guys do a lot of great stuff.
Or even like, what would be something that like someone could take away, even just from listening to this, like something I could add into my routine that would be beneficial, for injury prevention or something like that you don't see people typically doing.
Yeah, I think this is a concept that I've learned from other people, but it's essentially taking your daily inventory. Mm-hmm. But what I mean by that is like if you own a shop, before the day starts, you kind of take your inventory to see, okay, I have this much of that product, that much of that product. You can kind of take an inventory on yourself. Mm-hmm. So the way that I try to tell people to do is every morning you bring your joints into a full range of motion, a big, big circle, and you learn about your body, how you're feeling that day. Right. So you might notice that you're feeling especially stiff in certain areas versus other areas, especially let's say like, you had a snatch workout the day before and the next morning you do this, like, man, my right shoulder is really stiff and my left one feels pretty good.
Right.
That might tell you something already, like, okay, maybe I was favoring my right side a little bit more, what have you. And what you're feeling too helps to dictate whether or not you just need to stretch certain things out or come in to see with somebody like myself. Mm-hmm. So if I'm if I'm getting to here and I can't get quite past this, there's two main things that can happen. One is because like you're just so darn stiff on the front, like the lats are really tight. So in that case, you might just need to stretch out your lats a little bit more. Or you might feel like a pinching pain in the joint, which is something a little bit more concerning, and you might want to visit somebody like myself to have a better look at that because you don't want joint pain. Mm-hmm. That's often a clue that like, okay, something is not moving quite as nicely, and it requires another set of eyes on it. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I think more people can do is taking that daily inventory and seeing how they're feeling, because that'll also dictate how hard they're working in the gym. And it's not only just movement based, but a lot of the stuff that you do with the training here, like whenever we sign in to do our water of the day, it's like, how much sleep did you get last night? What's your mood like? That all plays into it as well. Mm-hmm. So taking all of those things together, I think this is one of the things that people can do to mitigate their risk of injury.
That readiness survey that's at the front of the workouts is actually interesting because like the Raptors and a few other like pro sports teams now are tracking like sleep and just basically this very subjective scale of like, how do you feel today?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to make it like, oh, lift this weight or do whatever, and they're noticing there's a huge correlation between how you think you slept, whether it was like not even like not just the hours, but like, do you think it was good or do you think it was bad or do you think it was eh? Yeah. And all these things actually, like you said, they all tie together and make a big difference in terms of how you feel.
Exactly.
And also I think I like that concept of the inventory because I think if you kind of take inventory on a daily basis, you have a much easier time of kind of catching things before they become terrible.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, this is feeling weird. Okay, I'm aware of it. I'm going to pay attention. Okay, oh, no, this is getting really weird. Like, I got to check it out. As opposed to you don't pay attention, you don't pay attention, you don't pay attention. All of a sudden one day you're like, whoa.
Exactly.
Like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
And does it also help, I guess where I'm going with this, does it help as a clinician if I come to you and I'm like, hey, I hurt my shoulder and I think it was doing this? Does like the mechanism of injury help you diagnose a little better and like
for
that
sure
kind of thing?
Like in our job, like the diagnosis is probably like 80-90% history. So even after we're done the history component, I'm already almost certain as to what caused it and what the diagnosis is.
Right.
So history definitely plays a huge role. Yeah, there was something else I wanted to say, but I think that was it.
Yeah, just I guess the history part of it, and because for me, I just think it's always interesting if I say like, hey, I was doing this thing, I felt this thing happen, and now it hurts when I do this. I just find typically that can help narrow it down.
It does, and
as opposed to just like my knee hurts when I don't know.
Exactly, for sure. And also, this is what I wanted to say. Oftentimes people say, like, you know what, I threw out my back. I'm like, how did you do that? I was just, picking up a pencil off the ground. But really, it's not that act. That act is usually kind of like that last step that goes.
Right.
Usually it's something that's been happening for a while, and eventually that was just like the last little barrier. So
Right.
things were happening for a while, and then it just went right over
straw
the
that
edge.
broke the camel's back. Kind
Exactly.
of thing.
Yeah.
Pun totally intended. That was intentionally a back joke.
Exactly.
But yeah, no,
So,
that totally makes sense.
Like if, like you said, like you, like just one day you hurt your shoulder doing this exercise, well, it might have been just that one, or it could have been something that was accumulating over a long time. Let's say like you're not using correct technique for a number of years, or even if you were just like, slightly off, but accumulated over time, and combined with, let's say, you're not getting enough sleep, you're not recovering enough between sessions, all that stuff adds up. There's a cumulative effect of all these things.
That's cool. That's good to know. And then benefits of like warm up or prehab or cool down and stretching. And if everyone, I'm sure all of it's beneficial, but if you have to pick one of those things over coming in, warming up with the group, doing the workout and leaving, what would you say like the next lowest hanging fruit is where people should spend their time on?
Warm up, definitely.
Okay.
That's where you're priming your body to get ready for whatever the workout is. Like there's something in soccer called the FIFA 11 Plus. So this is a program that FIFA put out several years ago, and it's a injury prevention program. But the way that it's designed is that it's meant as a warm up. So it's a standardized warm up that your whole team does together to get ready to play a bout of soccer. So it covers a number of different area. So there's things where you activate your hamstring, there's jumping, there's running, there's all that stuff. But that injury prevention program is like a warm-up. You do it before working out. So same thing with going in for your workout of the day. Warming up is crucial. So it's not just going on the treadmill for 5 minutes. There's a lot of other components to it. There should be, we call it like a submaximal aerobic activity. So something just to get physically warm. So you're starting to break a little bit of sweat, you're huffing and puffing a little bit. Then you're doing some kind of dynamic stretching. So it's a stretch that's a little bit more ballistic, a little bit involves a lot of movement, but it, again, warms up the muscle a little bit more, but it also starts to activate the muscles.
Right.
So you get something called pre-activation potentiation, which is a fancy way of saying that previous muscle activity will lead to further facilitated muscle activity. Okay. So kind of the same thing, like you ever done the thing when you're a kid, you go against like a door frame, you push up against the door, and you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Right.
Because you're priming those muscles to work.
Right.
And depending on what you're doing for the day, you might tailor that to whatever the thing is. So if you're doing more of a squat heavy day, then you really want to work your glutes, for instance, and make sure that those are primed and ready to go.
Right.
So after you've done your dynamic stretching, then you go to a sport-specific exercise. So you do lighter sets of squats if you're doing squats that day, and then you work towards your work set.
Right.
So most warm-ups should have some kind of exercise that covers those criteria.
Cool. No, it's good. I think a lot of times people sneak in and I see them, they do the question of the day and they go right to lifting or whatever. And I mean, there's a movement for a while. Like you don't need to stretch, just do some of the exercise you're going to do at a lighter weight to warm up. But I think especially as you start getting older and you start looking at it more like you're actually training and you're actually pushing your body to its limits. Because I think there's a difference that people don't always get. Like if I'm just coming in to work out and like I'm just going to put a little bit of weight on the bar, do some squats and move on, it's kind of a warm up in and of itself. But if I'm coming in like, okay, I need to add heavier weight, I need to train like an athlete. If you're bringing that mentality to it, I think having a solid warm up routine and doing the warm up with the class and then doing any other specific, like your shoulders bothering you, maybe you need to do some extra shoulder stuff today.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it's not programmed for the class, to make sure that you're ahead of that game. Because if you want to train like an athlete, I think you also have to recover and prehab like an athlete would too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like I'm 31, but I definitely noticed a difference from when I was 21. Because back when I didn't know anything, 21, nobody knows anything then.
Right.
I'd warm up for 5 minutes and go do my thing. But now it's like minimum half an hour usually.
Yeah.
I'm warming up before I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And
if you warm up right, you notice that your workout is so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And decreases your risk of getting hurt as well.
Right.
So like the more I've learned about this stuff, the more I've come to appreciate. Yeah, you got to warm up. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Anything else if you wanted to tell the guys and girls, anything else that you kind of want them to keep in mind of coming to check you out? When should they come see you? Anything like that? I know you're here Tuesday, Thursdays.
Yep, I'm here Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoons. Honestly, you don't have to wait until you're hurt to come see somebody like myself. And it doesn't have to be me. It can be, anybody that's around you, like if you aren't local to here. You don't have to wait until you're hurt to see somebody like me, because especially as a sports specialist, kind of like how you're mentioning earlier, like how you can learn a lot from watching somebody come out of their car.
Right.
I learn a lot by just seeing people lift or seeing people move everyday life. Like somebody over there is snatching, and I've been kind of like looking there too. But
and you'd be like, oh, you could work on this, and this.
Exactly, yeah. So but you start to notice patterns and trends. You'd be like, okay, he's walking this way to the bar. I think that he might be kind of like twist a little bit to the right, or then you see him squat, like the pelvis is shifted a little bit over to the right, and over time that could lead to like a knee injury, for instance. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, that you don't have to wait until you're in pain, because oftentimes when you're already in pain, like there's been all of that before that has already been accumulating over and over and over again. So by coming in, like doing something like a movement assessment just to see how you're moving, and even doing kind of teaching you that kind of routine to take that joint inventory, that'll already tell you a lot. You might notice that my right hip is moving so much better than the left hip, and that might play into the fact that like, okay, well, that makes sense then, because if I check squat, see how far they squat, but if they do a single leg squat, the left side is super wobbly because of hip restrictions or things like that. So yeah, that's my thing.
That makes sense. And I mean, just even then, you get a little more knowledge from like, okay, you know what? When I do warm up, I should spend a little more effort warming up like this, because I know that this is a problem. Because I think pain's always a good indicator of like, doesn't necessarily mean stop moving. It means do something differently.
Correct.
But you don't have to wait for that to be the indicator. You can be proactive about it.
Exactly. Ideally, taking that proactive approach and getting in first, like doing a checkup. You know? Like everybody goes to the dentist a few times a year, but most of the time your teeth doesn't hurt, right? So why are you going? Well, you want to prevent cavities, prevent getting a root canal, things like that.
Right.
Same thing with me. You want to prevent rupturing an ACL or getting a calf strain.
Right.
It's impossible to prevent 100% of injuries. That's true. You can't do everything, but you can definitely mitigate a lot of the risk by getting yourself checked.
Cool. Awesome. Anything else?
All right. I think we're good.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Thank
Pleasure
you.
chatting.
Yeah.
Hope you guys take some time to visit him out in the room there, in the treatment room. And if you guys have any questions, he'll be more than happy to answer them anytime he's around, unless he's in the middle of a workout. Then give him a minute to finish.
Exactly.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Take care.